Hello there, welcome to Saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground. In the late 90s, racing games were a massive seller, and Ridge Racer was among the biggest names in this genre, with PlayStation and arcades getting the best of it. That was until Ridge Racer 64 on the Nintendo 64. It's time for a retro review. Okay, let's get this clear right out the way. I'm not necessarily saying this was the best, but it certainly had the opportunity to be. The PlayStation was a fantastic console, but the Nintendo 64 had been able to do some really special things, and surely that would provide it the opportunity to do the same for a racing game. I've never been a massive fan of racing games. Games that are a little bit different, such as Mario Kart or Wave Race, I can usually get behind, but games where you have to actually think about shifting gears and things like that, I tend to struggle with a little bit more. That said, for games quality, it's quality, one way or the other. In the year 2000, when this game was released, the Nintendo 64 had already established itself as a fantastic console, with the best shooting games, platform games, and sports simulations available. Ridge Racer coming into this was coming onto a console that was well established, and people were well versed in how to get the best out of it. So Namco created Ridge Racer 64 by taking some of the stuff we'd seen in previous versions of the game, with a lot of new content too, but it was a fresh build from the ground up. This wasn't a port, so to speak. They'd really looked into what the Nintendo 64 was capable of and tried to get the best out of it, which, let's be honest, was a wise move. The game is very much what you would expect. It's a racing game. To start with, you have a small number of cars that you can choose from. However, I will point out the ability to customize those cars right from the get-go. You can't do a great deal, but you can change the general colour. There's literally a sliding colour bar scale which allows you to change aspects of the colour of the cars. The cars do vary a little bit, so their handling, speed, acceleration, etc. is different, so you pick the car that is most likely to suit you. You're then presented with 3 tracks, and you start on a novice level and aim to finish first. I found it quite interesting in playing this that there's no benefit in finishing second, third, fourth. You either finish first and finish winning that race, or you don't, so you just have to keep redoing it. There's no particular order in which you need to do those courses either, you just take it in your own time. It's not like a campaign or a Grand Prix where they are presented to you in an order. You just pick which one you want to do and try and finish first. Once you complete those, the next 3 courses will be unlocked. Now, if you take a first glance, it will feel like you're doing the same 3 courses, again, just on a harder difficulty. There are, however, differences each time the difficulty increases. There's very much the same 3 environments, but the layout of the course is different and does increase in challenge. You continue through the game, unlocking new tracks and of course new cars as well. There's multiplayer game modes and game modes where you can go head to head with one car in a highly rated challenge to see if you can beat their top score. Within the race itself as well, there is a sort of time cutout. If you fall too far behind, the game will just eject you. You have to reach checkpoints in order to make sure you get more time to continue the race. You can see that countdown in the top left hand side, something I wasn't really expecting. I don't know if that's something that's very common in racing games because I don't play a lot of them, but it wasn't something I expected to see, but in a sense it did help spur me on. So how was this game received back when it was released in 2000, especially with potentially people who were a little bit more knowledgeable about racing games? Well, Joe Otterson of Allgame described it as intense but uncomplicated racing action, and said that if you're looking for a straightforward racing game, this is pretty much at the peak of it, at the standards of the time at least. GamePro, on the other hand, gave some kind of mixed signals, with different reviewers giving very different takes. Major Mike stated it was one of the best racing games around, and certainly better than many of the other ones available, that arcade fans would want this in his collection, even if it did state that the multiplayer game was something of a disappointment. However, another reviewer for the same magazine stated that in the saturated market of racing games for the Nintendo 64, Ridge Racer 64 barely manages to keep up. And the scores themselves varied across all different magazines and websites, averaging from between 7.5 out of 10 to 9 out of 10, or around 91%. It's a pretty wide margin. This is where I look at these games through modern scrutiny, but I'm also going to throw in a few of my own personal opinions in here in general. I think the chances are that the reason the scores varied so much are similar to what we see in wrestling games and a lot of other sporting type games. A lot of it will depend on if this is the type of content for you. If you're a racing fan, you're much more likely to enjoy this one way or another. I myself am not a straight up racing game. However, I will say that the longer I played this, the more I got into it. I still found some of the sharp turns tricky, as you'll see from my constant swerving left and right throughout this video. But I started to get the hang of it a little bit. I started to actually finish first a few times and unlock some of the later courses. And I have to be honest, kind of enjoyed it. The audio is still fantastic, really enjoyable. And the visuals in it, well, I think they hold up very well. Yes, this is Nintendo 64, but we're a good few generations of consoles since this one, and I would have no qualms playing this now. Yeah, I'm sure more modern games have better graphics, but the environments and the cars all look pretty damn good, and I don't think anyone could say that they don't hold up well now. One gripe I did have, however, was the courses. There's 3 main course types, and then as you unlock new ones, you do get different variations, but they look very similar. They're different adaptations of same environments, but unless you really look, they don't really feel like a different course. It would have been nice if some of them had completely different looks, or nighttime instead of daytime, more different weather conditions, something to just help spice them up a little bit. That said, what we have still looks pretty good, and the fact that this one of the cars is the Pac-Man car, nice little nod back to Namco there, definitely put a smile on my face. On the whole, this is a good racing game. It just could have been better. I think that's fair to say. However, if you're happy with the environments you get here, and you're happy that the course itself changes and not too bothered about the aesthetic of it all, I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy this. And there's still plenty of variety in the cars, so yeah, not too bad. Ridge Racer 64 might not have been the massive leap forward that some gamers might have wanted it to be, but if you'd stuck with Nintendo and gone from racing games on the SNES and even earlier ones on the 64 to this, I still think you would have enjoyed it and been relatively pleasantly surprised. It might not have broke down barriers compared to other Nintendo 64 games, but it was still a decent addition to your collection. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, I know that's towards the lower range of how it was scored, but bear in mind this is a 25-year-old game and I still think it deserves that score. I'd also say, as someone who doesn't really like racing games, and to be honest, only did this game because I felt I needed something different on my channel, it still won me over, and I would say that a 7.5 out of 10 for me in a racing game is pretty high praise. More serious racers would probably want a more in-depth game, but then I probably would have scored it lower because I wouldn't have enjoyed that. But what do you think? Have you played any of the other Ridge Racer games? Because I haven't. What are they like? Comment below, let me know. Until next time, take the high ground.